It is 1:02. Good afternoon from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Jackson Williams. The Stanley Cup Finals are set to get started tonight as the Florida Panthers head to Edmonton to take on the Oilers in a rematch of last year's finals. Puck drop in that one set for 7 p.m. In the NBA, the New York Knicks are relieving Tom Thibodeau of his duties as head coach. Thibodeau led the Knicks to their first East Finals in over 25 years, made playoffs in 4 of 5 years, and led the Knicks to consecutive 50-plus win seasons for the first time since the 1990s. For our foundation repair and waterproofing needs, you need to visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Doors. 615-737-1045 is the number. We'll be joined by Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports at 2:20. Talk Titans OTAs and his takeaways as he was there yesterday. I wanted to wrap up our conversation about OTAs yesterday because we talked about some of the stuff that they have said and talked about, and then we kind of went off into the backdrop of the backup quarterback situation. And there was a clip I heard this morning. I was telling Jackson which clip to pull, but I heard from Ramon and Will this morning, and I believe it's a clip that Will had recorded on his own, but he was asking because Brian Callahan has said that, and he said the same thing last year, and we've heard the same thing about Ryan Tannehill, about pushing the envelope at these OTAs and stuff and, making some maybe unnecessary throws or crazy throws in practice. And yesterday, I guess Will is the one who asked Cam Ward about this because I didn't see the clip on the timeline. I heard it on their show. Mm-hmm. And he said he asked Cam Ward about not making the crazy throws in practice and what it means. So here's what Cam Ward had to say.
I really don't know. I can't really make no crazy plays in practice. Practice only tell half of the story. The game got to tell the other half. And so I'm more just trying to be better, first and second down. Not have to get the third down. Just trying to keep the chains moving, every play we get. And I think the more times that the quarterback position can put the ball in play, let his receivers, tight ends, and running backs make plays, the more successful the offense is going to be.
I thought it was pretty interesting is that he's like, yeah, we're practicing on third down, but I don't want to be in third down, essentially is what he's saying. He's like, it's all, I want to put the position of my players to succeed on first and second down, which seems very elementary from the quarterback standpoint. No team wants to be in third downs. But I thought about what we've talked about his tape and about that element of playing hero ball that we kind of saw on his tape, and we've seen it from Will Levis too, both in college and the pros. And it kind of sounds like almost a different approach in the mentality of that, hey, I'm not looking to make those big plays. And maybe I'm reading too much into it, Blaine, but it sounds like, hey, I'm not looking to make those big plays. I want to make the plays that get us out of the third down position, not to be in third down position.
Well, it's hard to say what he really meant, but I would love to hear, did he say something like that in Miami? Or did he say something the opposite?
Right.
But because his actions eventually speaks for him.
Right.
And so I think what he was really saying there is, I want to be efficient on first and second down, and that way we'll be in third down and manageable. Obviously, we don't ever want to get the third down.
Right.
Wink, wink, nod, nod, knowing you're always going to get in the third down. So I think that's what he was really saying. I think he's saying that, hey, I'm going to take what the defense gives me. Hey, he doesn't. I think this guy is really sharp and he's a quick thinker, not only on the field, but even when he's answering interviews. I love it. He sounds like he's a vet already in this league.
Yeah.
So I really like that because it's almost like he's thinking about what I say is how can they counter this this, what I say, so I'm going to make sure I keep it close to the vest, but yet still give them something.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's how you got to think when you're up there answering
It also feels
interviews.
very natural when he answers
Right.
it. He's not
been doing it for a
struggling
while.
to think up of an answer.
Right.
It's just all it flows very naturally out of
like
him.
he's done it before. That sounds like a vet. So I think he just understands the position and the weight that comes with it and everything else being a quarterback. So I'm not going to read into it until we get to see him in game, see him function in a game, not only preseason, but also regular season. But practice means a lot. But he said there even, practice it's only so much.
Which is also very interesting.
That's what I always say. Like, y'all taking a little too much out of practice.
Just like half of it or something.
Practice. I mean, but, practice, nobody's elevated with the intensity level, the speed of an actual game in practice. Nobody is doing that.
And I do think
myself,
that's something they've kind of alluded to, this coaching staff, which they didn't really talk about last year, was like, well, we'll see when the pads come on. Because we've heard him say that a couple of times and during last week's presser is like, okay, when the pads come on, that's when players will separate themselves. When the pads come on, that's when you'll see this. Last year didn't really seem that message was coming across. And maybe that's how they felt, but to the public, they weren't getting that message across very well. And it feels like now we're hearing even the players take on that kind of, and maybe Cam Ward's always been that way, but hearing Cam Ward say, well, it's just kind of like half of it. Practice is only half of it. And I think that is such a good insight to his mentality, because that's been kind of the question around it. Not a question about him, but like the topic and talking points around Cam Ward. I feel like I've gotten a little overboard here and there, because everybody's like, well, he's coming in at 5 a.m., which we talked about. Hey, that's a good thing. No knock on him. But the way that it's being covered is a little bit crazy. and then you hear stuff like people are asking, I believe he was even Easton, and we'll talk to him about it later, but he's asking about burnout. Are you concerned about burnout? And I'm like, why should we be concerned about burnout? I mean, I get that there's an idea that sometimes you need to recharge and all that kind of stuff, but I feel like for certain people, I'm sure there is some human limit. The limit does exist, but I feel like for certain athletes and certain elite superstars, this ball is life, right? This isn't work unless you make it work. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say? Like, let me put it to you this way. If you enjoy what you do, there's no burnout.
Well, here's what I'm going to say. No slight on anybody, but you can't. You're trying to equate this to normalcy, and sports isn't.
Right. That's what I was trying to get to.
You can't make it corporate and then think the sports is going to be the same thing. Yeah. Now, will he hit the rookie wall? That's not really burnout. That's the rookie wall. Him getting there at 5 a.m. is not going to burn. I would ask Easton Freeze, do you get burnt out writing articles daily? Because it's something that you love and what you're doing. To your point, it's not something that you feel like is work. So I think it's kind of taken on its own little animal here. Every player is different, as I mentioned before. McNair was not there at 5 a.m. He wasn't there at 6 a.m. He wasn't there at 7 a.m. He was there 10 minutes before. Don't know how long he was staying later. So every athlete, you don't have to be an elite athlete or a super duper great player to have these characteristics. Some guys function differently. This is how he functions. As you hear him talk, he keeps saying, this is how I learn. This is how I do things. This is how I process. This is what I do. This is what he does to make himself successful. And that's putting in the work. When you go 0 star to now first pick, you had to put in some kind of work that was extra than everybody else.
And that's where I'm at. I agree with you full-heartedly, is that to me, it's like, I can't get burnt out.
Yeah,
there's some times where I'm just like, man,
maybe a drag a little bit.
I may drag into the studio a little bit. I may snap at Jackson and Joseph when they're trying to talk to me and I'm trying to do some work. I do drag, but when the microphone comes on, I'm not burnt out. And I would never say I'm burnt out. I'm more burnt out over like doing errands and stuff, but I'm not burnt out doing what I love to do.
I can't say I do know personally from a friend of mine who was the quarterbacks coach. Drew Brees was just like this. Now, I don't know how much Peyton Manning, I think he was somewhat like that. But Drew Brees, I know for sure, because quarterback that I played college with was his quarterback's coach. And he was like, I'm not coaching him. He gets there at, 4 or 5 a.m. and telling me what I need to have on the docket for him when he gets there.
Cam Ward does sound very self-sufficient, right? Like, it's like there's not a lot of hand-holding that you need to do or worry if you're a coach that, oh, man, is Cam Ward going home and studying the playbook, or is Cam Ward coming in at this? Sounds like that's who he is. Yeah. And I think when that's in a part of your DNA as a player or as a person in general, it's really hard to get to a point where you're truly burnt out, because there are like breaks here and there anyway. But to me, it's just like, I just can't see a guy like Cam Ward. Like, I don't ever see Tom Brady technically ever getting burnt out, right? Like, I mean, I can't think of a time that Peyton Manning has. And again, Cam Ward has a long ways to go. What I'm talking about is the mentality of the competitor, the mentality of the athlete. I just can't get behind this concern of burnout. I just can't get with it, at least for this particular player.
Well, at least in sports, that's why I said he's trying to compare it to like normalcy of a corporate world. In sports, it's the most humbling thing, even when you're elite. Mm-hmm. There's always something you can work on.
Yeah.
See? So, and that drives you to keep coming back. See that?
Right.
If you really listen to him, he said, hey, I need to get these protections down. Mm-hmm. So he's calling protections? He's
what it sounds
protection.
like.
So now he's already elevated to the plays, the huddle, his adjustments. Now we're talking about offensive line, giving them the calls of what he wants to do when he changes plays or those plays that are called. So I think he's trying to be ahead of it all the way through. So when the season starts, he is smooth sailing, just thinking about how to attack the opponent and what's the best way to go about the team that you're playing. I think that's where we're at.
Yeah.
That's just who he is, and that's who he wants to be. And I think he puts, nobody's going to put more pressure on himself than him. So I think he
especially from how we've heard him talk, right?
So
I mean, like, we know of his journey. We know how of his upbringing. He has coaches in the sports coaches in the family. All this stuff, all the stories we have heard just leads me to a point where I'm just not worried about burnout. I'm not worried about the work ethic. I'm not worried about him being unprepared. And I'm not saying those last two things are things that Easton has said. Okay. But, like, there's very little I'm worried about in preparation, I guess I should say. Now, we'll see on the field if that preparation turns into success. But as far as the preparation goes, it sounds like to me, I'm not concerned about how early he comes in, how late he stays, or anything like that, because he knows himself better than anybody, and he seems to be tackling this, I guess, his approach to preparation like a 10-year vet. It really sounds like. I mean, again, I'm not there, but based on his words and the way that he has carried himself, it sounds like you're talking to a 10-year vet.
Yeah, and hopefully it turns into that.
Yeah.
That's what we expect.
That'd make life so much easier for Sports Talk Radio, right?
Man, I don't know.
Especially here in Nashville.
It may get boring if that's the case.
Maybe. Listen, I'm after suffering through a 3-14 season, I'm never going to get bored of winning games.
No doubt. I'm right there with you.
All right. When we come back, we'll talk about what Brian Callahan had to say about his young quarterback. We'll also talk to hear from Tracy Rocker on Devandre Sweat. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone.
Stinky, stinky, stinky. Is that what it was like the last time you were at an auto repair shop? Smelly, greasy old rags laying around all over the place on the countertop that you would not dare touch. Another thing that stinks is the repair shops that keep your car forever and they're not honest and they don't call you back when they say they will. Was that your last experience at a vehicle repair shop? Well, hey, it's Blaine Bishop to tell you about Eurofix because they take the stink out of European auto repair. And at Eurofix, you get a free 15-minute no-rent inspection with an estimate at every visit and not high-pressure sales tactics. And at Eurofix, you also get a 3-year nationwide warranty and a free loaner car with every repair appointment. And you never pay dealer pricing. Family owned for 26 years. Located in Franklin, Hundred Oaks, Murfreesboro, Belmead, and now Mount Juliet. And all you have to do is just give them a call at 844-EUROFIX. That's right, 844-EUROFIX, or you can visit them online at myEuroFix.com. That's myEuroFix.com. But always done blames at you.
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by all Four Seasons Garage Doors, 615-737-1045. We want to hear from you. What are your questions about Titans OTAs? What do you have concerns about when it comes to this team? 615-737-1045. And then, of course, we have the F&M Bank chat on Zone TV, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook Live. And we were talking about burnout of Cam Ward and all this kind of stuff. Here's what Brian Callahan had to say, speaking on managing a player like Cam Ward who is so eager to jump in.
Yeah, I've had that conversation. You know, there's everybody always starts out of the gate pretty hot, you know. But you start to get into the actual routine and you understand how long of a season it is and the marathon that it is for young players from the time they finish their college season to the time they finish an NFL season. I've made that point. Just again, I'm not telling him what to do. I'm just making the point that there's a lot ahead of him that he's not aware of yet when it comes to the length and the week to week grind that comes up for these guys, and it is a marathon. I mean, this is a long run for these young players, and all of them have to have the same sort of mindset that you're trying to get better every day and trying to put the work in that's required. But there's also that element of this is going to go all the way into January every day for the next however many months, and there is a bit of pace that's probably required. So they learn, they figure it out, but you try to help them and give them advice and point it out when you can. But I have no problem with guys trying to get the work in.
Yeah, I mean, no problems with guys trying to get the work in. You know, with younger players who've never been through this, you give them the advice and let them kind of figure it out on their own, right? I mean, you have to kind of figure out what works best for you as a player.
Yeah. So, I mean, he kind of summed it all up there, really. At the end there that, hey, he'll figure it out. But, hey, for right now, hey, he can be all in. We'll see where it all goes. But hopefully we'll be at this pace when it's tough, the wear and tear of being a young player and hitting that wall. That's what he's really saying.
Right.
We'll make sure he's there then. But right now he can be overzealous.
Yeah. You don't want to squash the energy right out of the get-go because really you want to foster it and help him utilize it, right? Because it's kind of like what we were talking about with the quarterback coach, Colbert, his quarterback coach, talking about the footwork and all that kind of stuff, the lower body, I guess I should say. And you don't want to change him. You want to work within him. You want to try to work within what he already does well. And if he's already got this kind of preparation routine that works for him, you don't really want to change it. You may want to, just give him advice or this or that. But to me, it's like you don't want to overhaul it and rein it back in. You want to foster that and work within Cam Ward.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so that's what leads to success.
Right.
He laid it out for him, and that's what he's used to. So mentally, I think he says this is what I need to do to be prepared every stop I've been to. 3 different stops in college. Obviously, he knows what works for him. So, yeah, I think I'm all in. I think he understands really that there's a mental part playing, especially quarterback, that is just as much important as an actual throw. And to me, that's what this all tells me. And that way he can just then play freely and not have to think, because he's already done the thinking when he sat there and watched all this film, kind of went through what he's going to do and what the counter move is to that if it's not available.
Yeah, well, he's got the film, he's got practice, he's got the VR, he's even talking. Heard him talk in one of the clips about hanging out with Calvin Ridley or working with Calvin Ridley, not hanging out, but like they're training even on the weekends. They're throwing together. They're trying to build that chemistry. So it sounds like to me, it's all football all day, which he's ball is life and all that kind of stuff. But like that's what he wants his Wikipedia to be. That's what motivates him. That's what gets him out of bed. And to me, there's nothing wrong with his approach to the game at this point in time that I can even fathom to think that would even come down later in the future, that this idea of either burnout or doing too much or overexertion or exhaustion, whatever you want to call it. I just think this is when you're doing something that you love, that you're motivated to be the best at it. I just don't see it.
Yeah, ultimately, this is about, if you love something, it's not work, and, you want to be the best at it. And he's trying to see if he can tip the limits of being the best version of who he can be. And maybe that takes him being, better than a lot of players that were young rookie quarterbacks last year. Caleb Williams, Aiden Daniels. Maybe he wants that. Maybe he has private goals to say, I want to reach these marks in my play, and hopefully that will show in us winning some games. You just never know. Some guys are just built different, and it's kind of weird if other guys don't come along with you, then you just start leaving people in the dust.
Right.
So there's other players that are meeting with them, too, at the same time. So nobody's talking about them, though, because they weren't at first.
Well, yeah, they're not the quarterback. Yeah. Let's talk about Cam. This is what Cam Ward had to say on working with Calvin Ridley.
It's been good with Red, especially, a vet who's had, decent amount of stops, who's produced at every stop. For him to hear my feedback on what I want, and, I got to hear his, because at the end of the day, if I'm not clicking, he's not clicking, we the two main pieces. So we gotta listen to each other and continue to build that chemistry, staying at the practice, getting work in, and, even on the weekend, getting work in.
Cam, in your eyes, what kind of receiver is Calvin Ridley?
That man a dog. He can win versus press man. He knows zone. I think he's one of the top 5 receivers in the NFL, if not the best. And so I'm blessed to play with him. He's going to make me look good. Every chance, I get a chance to throw the ball to him. But he's somebody who's coachable. He's a team guy. And, he's the right person to lead that room.
Just talking about Calvin Ridley's a dog, all this kind of stuff that we've known about Calvin Ridley, because, you've talked about it a few times, but last year when you saw Calvin Ridley doing the drills and doing 7-on-7, 11-on-11, you were like, that's it. Hands up. Yeah. This guy's legit.
Yeah, there's no question. He's the best guy on the Titans team. That was for sure. Now, speed. He just has this combination of speed and quickness that a lot of players don't have, and so he can get you in different ways. So that's why I kind of like how they utilize him. I think they finally figured out in game. Mm-hmm. You only know so much from practice, and then he's fast. But when you have a quick twitch, I think some people think fast and quick is the same. That is not the same. Restrepo is really quick. He's not fast. Yeah, see, that's the difference. He's fast for the normal person, but we're talking about pro sports. He's just a normal 4.5 like everybody else, right?
Right.
Well, Ridley's a 4.3, and he's quick as lightning. And those combinations, if you perfect route running, is very, very dangerous in the National Football League. It's going to be very few people who can match up with you. How many receivers play outside? Then they play inside. Oh, and by the way, he also runs reverses. See, we've hit every dynamic, and then he can hit you in the short game, the mid-range, and the deep game. So there's no part of his game that he can say that I can't affect games. Yeah, I just got to give me the ball, and I just got to make sure I catch him. Right. See, so it was funny watching the practices. You see him working in individuals with the quarterback, and he's the only wide receiver doing it. During drills where the receivers are somewhere else, but he's over there with the quarterbacks catching curls, and when they're doing their drills, he's the guy catching it. Not, some assistant coaches and everything else. He's over there getting extra catches. It's a kind of something to watch. I think he's working just as hard as the quarterback, to be honest.
Right.
And to make sure that they're on the same page. I think he's probably, a little tired of starting off season slow, whether it was in Jacksonville or here. I don't know the situation there in Atlanta, but that's kind of been a history over the last 2 seasons. So I think he's trying to avoid all of that with the extra work with Ward, even on the weekend. So,
well, he is an Alabama alumni, so I would expect nothing less but the hard work that he's putting in. So, just like all Alabama athletes.
Well, I can say this. I didn't see Julio Jones doing that.
Yeah. It is interesting because you look at the way he started the year, because you were talking about it seemed like they kind of figured it out. When you look at his game-by-game game log, right, you see, it looks like they kind of did start to figure it out at some point. And I kind of look at it like this. I know the big storyline from last year during this offseason break was the Levis and Calvin Ridley never feeling like they were on the same page. And that was the big talking point. Chemistry. And everybody in that building said, it will come. It will happen. Don't worry about it. You'll see it in the regular season. And it took a long time for that to happen. So if whatever they're doing together, working either on the weekends or staying late after practice, if that works and speeds up that process, that only helps everybody involved. That only helps Calvin Ridley. That only helps the other wide receivers and freeing them up. It helps Cam Ward to know that he's on the same page with his wide receiver one and has a reliable target, that he knows that Calvin Ridley is going to be in that spot when I throw it right there. Like all that timing and stuff can only happen. So that is a storyline that we should all be watching because it did translate. Not only everything translate to practice, but for that particular thing last year, that translated to the game where you saw them not be on the same page, where you saw Calvin Ridley slowing down or having to speed up and just missing some footballs because their timing wasn't right there. Because you are throwing to a spot and a wide receiver has to be at the right spot. But like you saw that in game. Not everything translates from practice to the regular season, but that thing sure did. So I'm hoping that they get on the same page right here, right now. Not right now, but like this offseason.
Well, I think that's what people don't understand. It's really hard for receivers and quarterbacks to really get on the same page. That's why I don't like the dynamics of trading a receiver in the middle of the season because it's certain players they're going to have a rhythm of throwing to, and they always know they're going to be at that spot. And then if you haven't worked with them a lot, you start losing trust because you start missing them. And even at practice. And it's really weird. You don't have to be an elite receiver. Like NWI was on the same page as Will Levis. Let's just say that. Just as that example. But he couldn't get on the same page with Ridley. Right. See that? So it's just harder than people think. And when they start missing consistently, every other practice there was a miss, and he's wide open or he's open. You start saying, "Oh, this is starting to be an issue." And I know they have to say all the nice things, and it's going to work out because you want to be positive because you don't want to, kind of get in everybody's head about it. And eventually, it came to fruition, but just not when they needed it. I mean, they needed to start from finish. Because to me, he's probably, I don't know, 80 catch, 1,200, 1,300 type player, man. That should be an average year for him. And I don't even know if he's ever reached that in his career as far as yardage. He maybe one time, I think he had a big year one year. It might have been with the Falcons.
Yeah, it was the 2020 year. He had 1,374 yards on 90 catches. So pretty close to what you were just saying.
He's that kind of player. He should have that kind of impact. And then that should then hence make everything easier for the other wide receivers and the tight ends. He's an elite player amongst those other elite players. And it'll be interesting to see who's in the slot and then who's outside. I like what I see out of Jefferson running routes. I do like the rookie Alec from Stanford. Manor. Yeah. He looks the part. Now, we got to see it, but I don't think it's going to change when the pads come on just because
he's not built on speed, right? Like, he's built on strength.
Well, it's funny you say that because that's kind of what I thought. But I know we're in shorts and stuff, but he seemed much quicker than I thought. And twitchy, let's say. Okay. Now, I didn't see him run, just blow by somebody. Right. No. But I mean, even running intermediate routes. So I think he understands how to control his weight and move. And I just like the way he was built durable like an NFL player. Like he'd already been in the league. That's how he looked. So I'm interested to see how this parlays out, when they start playing game, because I think his physicality is going to bring some other things to the table against some NFL guys. And I think that's why I give him a little bit of an edge on the other young players because he has that kind of physicality. They would, practice on pressing and he was just getting off, just throwing them and shit. I mean, he has a presence about him, a physicality that he fears nothing. So I kind of like that. If I'm watching on the other side, I'm like, hey, man, y'all better get this dude. This dude is not playing with y'all over there, man. So I like it. So it's just, you want to see how quickly it just starts coming, where it just hits and then all of it flows together. See, you can do that individually with Ridley and Al Manor and then, Lockett or whoever else is Jefferson, whoever else it is, man, I feel like they got something there. And then with Ward pulling the trigger, getting the ball out really quick. He was getting the ball out. I always say they used to have the horn. I learned all this from Fisher. We had a horn out there, and it would go off automatically during the passing game. And whether it was 7-on-7, he was like, you're sacked. That ball was not complete. Yeah. So they don't have a horn, but that Ward doesn't need no horn. He getting rid of that ball quick.
Yeah. I look at it too because we were talking about we're really kind of talking about growth and development of these young players. Mm-hmm. And I know we were talking about Calvin Ridley. We also talked about Will Levis and last year with Calvin Ridley not getting on the same page. But I think people kind of maybe they do, but maybe they don't understand by and large is that yes, a curl route's a curl route, but not everybody runs the curl route the same way. Yeah. And so that's why you see, we've heard a couple of instances from this practice of, okay, Cam Ward misses someone, he brings them over, and they get on the same page of how they run that curl route or how they run that slant. And if the quicker you can do that, the better. And we know that Elikayo Manor, Chimere Dike, Xavier Strepo, Gunnar Helm are at least 4 of the guys that are coming in early in the morning, right, at these 5 a.m. meetings that we're talking about because with Cam Ward. So that's going to be able to help them. All these practices and everything is going to be able to help them. Hopefully, again, that turns into success at training camp when the pads come on, because that's really when you want to start seeing. Let's say this, if you're into joint practices in early August, late July, and you guys are still having to figure out each other, I feel like that's not spelled definitive doom, but you're not where you need to be at that point in time. You want to be you want to have way less of that at those practices, right?
Well, I put the onus on the players. I think, the coaches only can do so much. But I think you have to go and communicate it, whether it's in film. That's why I came up with that idea. Not me, but that's some of the things we did. Bring the quarterbacks in with the receivers and have meetings. And so they can then talk to one another instead of just on the field when that's already too late and bringing about doubt and questions. So that was one of the things I thought was super beneficial for us with DBs with the linebackers. Like they were killing our passing game because he's supposed to be right there in the curl area, but he's up there biting up on the cheese every time, every game. It is frustrating. Like, what the heck are you doing? Like, what are y'all telling? Well, the coach was telling him. He just wasn't doing it. So when we go through walkthroughs, hey, man, got to make sure, don't bite the cheese. Let them get that. We can all rally to that and tackle them, and then we off on the field. It's 4th down. All we care about is the distance. And you keep biting up on the cheese, they throwing right behind your ear. So those are the things I think players got to take, leadership on that. And I think that's where it starts with Ward, and he's already shown those leadership skills. But players need to talk too. One thing that happens when these guys are running routes, all of them run them differently, even though they're the same routes, is that you start reading their body language of what they're going to do when you're the quarterback, so you know how to put it in their spot and where they'll end up. Because if you're anticipating where they're going to be, all the players aren't going to run like a robot and run 10 yards and curl, right? Their body language and their movement skills tell you how they are going to move. I've studied these players. I've studied these wide receivers. I know this is what the quarterbacks are looking for. And everybody's language is different. Body language is different. See? So that's where then the timing hits. When he says, oh, but we're like here. And the other guys are going to say, well, no, I always stem out and then I come back in, then I come out. So theirs is a little bit different. I'm at the spot when you want me there. Just know I'm on the right page with you, but we just missed on our timing. I can speed up or I can slow down, one of the two. And that's where you got to take it in on your own. The coach can't be like, hey, man, run the route like this. Well, if you're a rookie, run it like this. But as time goes on, you start trying to manipulate, the DB. And sometimes you waver a little bit more than you, or weave a little bit more than you normally do, just because this guy's kind of sitting on a route.
Yep. I love it. I could just sit there and listen to you talk about football like that all day. And luckily, I get to do it 5 times a week.
Jackson said he was waiting to listen this time.
He's just over there behind the glass doing this, telling me it's a break.
He said he was waiting to input because he said he wanted to talk about how he was called white chocolate.
There you go. White chocolate behind the glass telling us that we had to go to break. Thoughts, white chocolate?
Go Titans.
There you go. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone.
King and Associates Insurance in Brentwood stands out as an independent agent offering more than just a range of insurance options. They handpick the best companies, building strong relationships with industry leaders, and create customized bundling plans. And life throws you some curveballs, and they get it. My friend and coworker switched from another independent agent, got superior coverage for his home, contents, and cars, and experienced clear communication, and had truly an ally, because when his 16-year-old daughter's accident happened, thousands of dollars was going to be paid. But guess what? They weren't overpaid, and they weren't overpaying their agent. And you should save even more by switching to them. And don't do it just because he did or I did. Do it because it makes sense for your family, your business, or personal needs. And all you have to do is just call is King and Associates, 615-321-8281. That's 321-8121. And check out tkinginsurance.com to keep more money in your pocket.
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 105 The Zone, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Door. 615-737-1045 is the number. One of the more important second-year players for the Tennessee Titans is Devandre Sweat. And here's defensive line coach Tracy Rocker talking about challenging Sweat personally to continue growing and maturing and the whole defensive line to develop a coordinated pass rush and stop the run.
Well, there's always the growth and maturity for Sweat. Every year, it's going to be challenged. Football is hard, and now you actually get an off season, then you realize in the off season, it's not all you thought it was. Once you didn't have to see you had you did some things in the season that were good. Then you look back and you're like, ooh, that was bad. You see the good and bad of things, and now you want to try to improve it and make it better. And those are the things that he's talked about and we've talked about with him to make sure it's better.
Any particular challenges you issue to him?
Well, I mean, my particular challenge always is that we it's like what you mentioned earlier, just being, the coordination of pass rushing, and then after that, I'll go stop the run.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, Devandre Sweat, he's back at practice. He apparently has lost a lot of weight as well. So I'm interested to see, he doesn't look like it. I mean, I'm no body type expert, I guess I should say, because he still looks, he's just a big boy. But if he can upgrade his game, because it sounds like to me they're kind of maybe going to transition him to almost a traditional nose tackle position. So I know that a lot of people are wanting him to have a lot of sacks, and maybe he will. But at the end of the day, he's a guy that's just supposed to be moving, that needs to be moving the pocket at the very least on passing plays. He needs to be a force in the run game. I think expecting a lot of sacks is probably not the way that I would set expectations, but he's probably a 4.5, 5.5 sack kind of guy. And if you can get that out of him among all the stuff that he's going to do as far as being disruptive in the passing game and in the run game, I think there is a case to be made that he's a super important piece of this defense going forward for sure. And he needs to show this year. He doesn't need to show it, but I think that at a certain point you got to start showing that 38th overall pick status.
And that's based off of because if he gets sacks.
No, I'm just saying being a force in the entire defensive game. I'm not. Like I said, I don't ever expect a double-digit sack season or anything. He's like 4.5, 5.5 sack.
Well, naturally, everybody's going to look at his numbers. That's why I said that. So, but how many sacks did he have last year?
I think just 1.5.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in that show when he was in college, he missed a lot of sacks. I watched a lot of film on him. Actually, he was probably just a tad, maybe just being real critical. Maybe he could have been a little bit better. I think of some of that came with because he was playing injured, but nobody was talking about that. But when she's staring on the film and the tape, I thought he kind of had the impact that he should have had.
As a rookie, for sure.
Right, yes. And what everybody was talking about him being in shape and all that nonsense. Because
he definitely proved that was nonsense.
I don't know where it came from. Why was he out of shape?
It was a thing in his junior year in Texas.
On third downs. That's what happened.
Yeah, so it was a thing in his junior. I think if I recall correctly, is either his sophomore or junior year at Texas that stuff came into question about whether or not he had the type of leadership or desire to play football. And then his senior year, you saw him be an Outlander winner, the trophy winner. I never bought into this idea that he was I even got video, audio, and article proof that I am a day one Devandre Sweat supporter.
Yep,
and this idea that he could not play on third downs, and this idea that he cannot affect the passing game is idiotic. And that's what I'm still trying to say right now is that his effect and disruption in the passing game comes with him taking on double teams or pushing the pocket, getting the quarterback uncomfortable in the pocket. It's not necessarily going to translate to the stat sheet.
Right, because that'll lead to the outside guy getting a sack or what have you. So, but when I watch film, I never saw what people were saying. I think some people kind of piggyback off of what other people say. And that's why I always say fact check yourself before you want to just regurgitate what someone else says. Because there's a lot of people out here that just make up stuff because they just don't like somebody or because they want to get clickbait.
Or because they heard it from
somebody else.
Well,
That's
that
what I'm saying.
person said it, so that must be true.
Well, that goes on for the organizations because they have media people that they want to give information to. That goes on too when it's not fact checked, and that's not true. So that's why they try to manipulate even the media, people who don't know. So I'm not with any of that. So when I go watch the film, the eye in the sky never lies. You can talk about players all you want to, but when you turn on the tape, it tells you who they are. And he was never that. So that was kind of interesting in itself. So I just gave him a little more motivation.
If I recall correctly, even in his last year of Texas, he played the most snaps out of all the defensive line players.
I think you came up with that numbers. He was exactly what I thought he'd be. Now that he's been in the league a year, and you're talking about meeting the 38, I'm not a real big proponent on, meet up to 38. I don't think that's how athletes think. That's how media thinks. The athlete thinks, I need to continue to evolve and grow my game, and once they get satisfied, then they don't evolve and grow their game.
Complacency is a killer.
Right. So that sometimes happens. I don't think he's that type of guy, but you just never know. I think he wants to be the best version of himself, and so he's going to continue to evolve. And if that leads to sacks, then great. But if it doesn't, continue to be that push the pocket, get after the quarterback, cause havoc. Because ultimately, that's all you can really control. And then if you don't get sacks and it doesn't turn into numbers, when they turn on the tape, they still see that this is a heck of a player. So, some people going to grab on, he only had 2 sacks. Well, did you really watch him? Like when we were talking about the Shamor guy from A&M.
Right.
And he had no sacks. I said, but when I turn on the tape, this guy's impacted the quarterback. He missed a lot of sacks. I don't know, man. It was kind of remarkable that he missed that many.
Did you see the picture of him today?
I know he's holding out, right?
No, he's there. He's lined up in the stretches with the group, but he's not stretching. He's standing straight up.
Oh, well, yeah, he's not. Yeah, but that's the Bengals for you.
Yeah.
But, so it's just, I think people need to just kind of, let's watch them do a little bit of history, even if it's just half of a season. Watch a guy play and quit regurgitating what other people say when they don't know what they're talking about. That right there, it could motivate a player. Sometimes they need that extra push. They're like, okay, I'm going to show you. Right. Well, you said what? Oh, okay. Yeah. They be nice and cool and dandy while you're talking to them. They be like, man, these dudes talking about I'm going to be out of shape. Man, they don't even know who they talking to.
Well, that was the thing that drove me nuts about the whole Sweat thing is it made me feel like I was taking crazy pills.
Then they remember he got the arrest. And, man,
I don't even get me started on that.
I was like, this, at 4 years of college, he had this one mistake. And they go, oh, no, it was timing. I go, well, wait a minute now. That was right after everything he had done, all his testing. He probably said on his couch, "Ooh, I am so relieved. I'm about to go have a drink." Did he do something wrong? Ding dong, yes. But does his history tell you this is who he is? There was none. Yeah. There was no history. You tell me you're not entitled to make a mistake when you're 20-something years old, young 20s? Come on, man. We've all been there. We're writers. Just don't forget who you are. I mean, you were there. I was there. Everybody's been there. You all did some bowheaded things at 21. Jackson sure the heck did.
Absolutely.
He still does boneheaded things.
I'm a bonehead.
So, I mean, come on, man. Let's keep it real and not, being hyperbolic like these guys are just off the charts. This guy's a wild guy.
Well, it changed the whole narrative around the player, which made no sense because we're talking about a guy. If I went back and did this, when you go back and watch, look at Dane Brugler, who puts out his top 15 or top 50. I'm sorry, top 50 before the DUI. He was ranked the 35th best player in the NFL draft. The only thing that changed from there to his post or April pre-draft rankings in April, at the beginning of April, was the DUI. And he dropped him all the way to 140-something. That's not reality.
No.
I mean, I'm sorry, but that is not the reality of the situation. And you know what that did? That changed the whole narrative about him because when the Titans drafted him at 38, people went crazy. What a reach. This is a reach. I can't believe that you did that. The Titans are stupid. And now they all look stupid because they're all having to do an apology tour right now.
All I want everybody to do is go watch when he picked up that ball and ran.
Yeah.
And that'll tell you how athletic this big dude is.
And he did
that
it
is
heavier.
abnormal. Jackson couldn't do that.
No, there's definitely no way. I don't care. White Chocolate can do all the one-handed catches he wants to flag football. There's no way he's doing it right now.
He was straight arming Robert Newhouse and these dudes, man.
Hey, yeah, I mean, he's got the skill.
Yeah, I look at it, and we'll go to break on this because we're going to talk about the defense. But keep in mind, he was heavier in college, right? Heavier than he was even last year in the NFL. Heavier in college, and he would go sideline to sideline to chase down a running back. Guys,
there was some
there
games.
was nothing about. There was no question.
Right.
This guy was a fringe first rounder.
Right. Lastly, I'm gonna say this: there were times in games, and I'm talking on in totality, that he was better than Big Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
I said it here first because I said that before.
Yep.
There were some games he was better than Big Jeff.
No,
Take
doubt.
that to the bank.
Take it to
Watch
the bank.
The tape.
Watch the tape. I love it. When we come back, we're going to talk about more about the defense because is this defense better than 2024? That's the question we're going to have for you when we come back. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here at 104.5 The Zone.
2:04. Good afternoon from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Jackson Williams. The Stanley Cup Finals set to get started tonight as the Florida Panthers head to Edmonton to take on the Oilers in a rematch of last year's finals. Puck drop in that one set for 7 p.m. In the NBA, the New York Knicks are relieving Tom Thibodeau of his duties as head coach. Thibodeau led the Knicks to their first Eastern Conference Finals in 25 years, made the playoffs in 4 out of 5 years at the helm of the Knicks, and led the Knicks to consecutive 50-plus win seasons for the first time since the 1990s. For your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, you need to visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Hour 2 of Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Doors. 615-737-1045 is the number. We're just talking about Devandre Sweat and how everybody but us got it wrong. In typical media fashion, we're always the only people that bat 1,000, I feel like.
I don't know if I'm about 1,000, but I got that one right. Jackson got it wrong.
Yeah, Jackson definitely got it wrong. Okay, so looking at this defensive line compared to last year, it's almost the same people. It's Sebastian Joseph Day, Devandre Sweat, Jeffrey Simmons, and I'm just talking about the guys that mainly play with the hands in the dirt, not the edge rushers. They added James Lynch in the middle of the offseason last year. They still got James Lynch here. Keandre Coburn is still here. They've added the following guys that are a little bit different. Carlos Watkins, not an undrafted free agent, a waiver claim that they had made. Then they have these undrafted free agents, Philip Bleedy from Auburn, Cam Horsley from Boston College, Devontae O'Malley from Northern Illinois, and Isaiah Rakes, who escapes me from where he's at, but I think he's from Auburn as well. But maybe Jackson can fact check me on that. But it looks like to me that they were pretty happy with the defensive line performance. And sure, Jeffrey Simmons got injured, and sure, not a lot of sacks came from anywhere from this group. But Sebastian Joseph Day, great vet to have, the great vet addition last year. I wanted them to bring him back this year. They brought him back this year. Devandre Sweat, an ascending rookie. Jeffrey Simmons, an above-average NFL defensive lineman. We'll see what he is now that he is, from what we've heard from Tracy Rocker, he's kind of slimming down, trying to get a little bit faster, so we'll see how that translates to some on-field success. So I guess you would just say it's almost a wash for this group because it's basically the same. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, they didn't. You said D-line, not D-tackle. Well,
I'm talking from the guys with mainly their hand in the dirt. Yeah, they're the guys I named and everything. Well, just they're the same guys, not the edge rushers.
From a football perspective, everybody has their hand in the dirt, almost. But some guys do stand up.
Yeah,
but that's, not all of them. I mean, I get where some of them do. But, the D tackles, we're talking about them. I think probably there was always in a season where you say a couple games, they didn't play as well as they should have, but overall, they were a pretty solid group. I mean, when you're talking about Big Jeff and Sweat, just them two alone, I think that tells you where they stand there. You want probably more production in the pass rush game, being very critical, because those guys want to push and drive to be the best they can be. So we'll see if that happens with Sweat trying to lose some weight. And maybe that helps him, give him that extra half step that he needs to get sacks instead of, pressures. Man, I think, this group here is a solid group all around. Especially with those two up at the top, naturally being really upbeat, probably, borderline potential, Pro Bowl type players.
Yeah. You would think that with another year under his belt, a little bit of loss of weight on Devandre Sweat, is that, because he made an impact last year as a rookie. Now, was it a consistent impact week in and week out? Probably not, but that
happens.
Let me say something.
Rookie.
That's a fantastic year to build off of, from what you said, to evolve. So hopefully we'll see that evolve, and this will end up being a better-looking defensive line because also Jeffrey Simmons will be healthier too, as long as he doesn't suffer another injury. Because he last season he did suffer that injury that we still don't have any resolution about.
It was his elbow, right?
Yeah, it was something that he needed Tommy Johns for because I remember that was the baseball, the UCL. So maybe we'll get answers about that whenever he shows up to camp. I'm assuming mandatory mini camp's coming up, so I'm assuming he will be there, except to risk fines. Maybe he's okay with that. I don't know, but year over year, it's largely the same group, and they were largely not the main issue with this defense last year. That's where I get to the edge rush group. Because obviously the Tennessee Titans have lost Harold Landry, but they have replaced him, or in the aggregate, I guess you could say, they've signed Draymond Jones, they've signed Lorenzo Carter, they drafted Femi Oladejo. So do you think this is maybe it's not better at the top, but it is better at the depth? Because last year we're talking about Harold Landry, Rashad Weaver, who didn't even make it to the regular season in June, but he was here in June. Caleb Murphy was here in June. Thomas Rush, Jalen Harrell is still on the team. Those were the guys that were behind Harold Landry and Arden Key. So this seems like the Tennessee Titans have better depth, but maybe not the better pass rushing starters, I guess I should say.
Well, on paper,
I
don't know if they look better. I think that's up to the players and the coaches if they feel like they have, based off what they want to do. Naturally, they don't have a star pass rusher or a guy people are game planning for. I think that's where they're missing the boat. And they've overdone it at D tackle. What you try to do is spread it amongst all the different positions. You have one elite player or someone, it's a Pro Bowl-like player. So you have two D tackles who are very, really good. So I want to trade one out to have them at DN. That way now you have it a little split up, and now you have somebody can game play, and that'll help everybody else out. But it's not the case. They took the best player available, last year at 38 with Sweat. So I think they're trying to mask issues. They made a decision with Landry that he wasn't worth the money they were paying him. He's more of a blue collar, the guy opposite an elite player, who has a motor. And now they probably brought in a whole bunch of guys that are somewhat similar, but maybe a little bit different in that they're a little more physical. So I think they're going to try it. This is a guess. I think they're going to try to mask, elite pass rusher with a whole bunch of blue collar, hardworking guys who are all going to, let's say, pick up 4 sacks. And we're going to beat them with accumulation of different guys bringing different things to the table. 4 sacks amongst all of them, including even the D tackle guys. And then I think that's what their plan is. They don't know if it's going to work out that way, but I think that's the only thing I can think of, because when you line up against this team, as far as pass rushers on the outside, there's no elite player. There's hard, blue collar. We go hard. We're going to give you all we got, and we'll see where that lands. Now, sometimes that's going to be some sacks, and sometimes it's going to be missed sacks. It's going to be pressures. So I'm interested to see how this plays out. I really am, because sometimes when you look at the numbers and it'll tell you one thing, but dang, man, they get out here, you go, well, hey, man, this guy is really good. Or, oh, this guy is exactly what I thought he was. He just missed sacks.
You know what
it's hard to say,
just hit me talking
about
about that?
Reason why these guys are still in the league. Why are they still in the league if they got 0 sacks? Like that don't make sense to me.
You know what that made me think of? That there needs to be, because like you got quarterback hurries, you got quarterback hits, you got those different stat categories, and you got sacks. But like, what about the plays where I guess it maybe does show up as a quarterback hurry, but like the plays where you push the pocket and it's an incompletion because the timing, the quarterback got rid of the ball early before anything else. And I guess maybe that is a quarterback hurry when I now say it out loud in front of a microphone. But like at the end of the day, not just because it's not a sack doesn't mean the play was successful, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right. There's no stat for that.
Yeah.
There is, and I think that happens a lot in games.
Because if you force the quarterback
affected the quarterback,
yeah.
but that's not part of a stat that they say, oh, no, he was still a step away.
Right.
No, the quarterback felt him there. He rushed that throw.
Yeah. Or he decided, oh, crap, this guy's coming. I see this guy coming. I better throw it to this guy in the flat. And well, that guy is 5 yards short of the sticks, and there's a fourth down.
Exactly.
Like, you don't really see that very talked about a lot.
Well, that's where you come into play.
I know.
Jackson.
We got to figure that out. We got to figure out maybe how to perfect this better for the defenders, because I do feel like there are plays.
Nobody cares about the defense.
Yeah, no, that's true. Until they're letting a team put up 50 points on you. You know what I'm saying? Like, nobody cares until they care.
Oh, man.
But I look at it and I go, you're right, because there are plays where you could see a Lorenzo Carter kind of pushing his man, and maybe it's not in the realm where it counts towards the
pressure,
stat,
right.
but you don't know what's the quarterback's thinking, right? The quarterback's thinking, oh, my guy's beat.
Yeah.
So I got to change my plan, or I got to throw it before I was really ready for it. My feet aren't planted. Stuff like that, to me, is like, okay, maybe you're right, Blaine. Maybe we're not going to see a lot of sacks on the stat sheet. But do we see a lot of points? Do we see a lot of third down conversions from the opposing team's offense? That's really maybe tells you the better story is like third down conversion rate is maybe the better stat than maybe sacks and this and that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's almost like you have to use to explain, if you're one of those people that has to try to explain stuff and make arguments based on the numbers, then maybe you're trying to say, okay, well, let's look at what's their third down conversion rate. What's their red zone rate? Those are the stats that matter, maybe not necessarily sacks.
Yeah. And then,
sacks matter, but don't get me wrong.
It does. And I don't know, how many sacks did they have and where did they rank, Jackson? But I know it had to be somewhere close to the bottom. I know they weren't the bottom. I know that for a fact. But I just feel like that's the missing piece here on the defense. That's the one missing piece left. Some stud, impactful type player, a guy who's a bona fide pass rusher, 10-sack guy. And when I say that, I'm not talking about get it at a coverage sack. I'm talking about this guy brings problems to offenses game in and game out, play in and play out. And they have to do accordingly what they need to make sure he isn't impacting, like chip, double team, hold a tight end in. I'm talking about that type of player. And that's defensively, to me, if they get that piece, and trust me, I've been there when we didn't have the piece, and then when we got the piece, it was like, oh, man, this is so much. You mean I don't have to
made things easier for you.
Right, it did. Not just me, the linebackers, everybody, the other D linemen. It just like opened floodgates like, oh my, I'm about to start making a whole bunch of plays.
The Tennessee Titans were tied for 30th, 32 sacks. So they 30th in the league, 32 sacks according to Pro Football Reference. Only the Atlanta Falcons with 31 and the New England Patriots with 28 had less sacks than the Tennessee Titans, and they were tied with the Carolina Panthers with 32. There you go. Sorry to burst your bubble, hurt you there.
They still weren't last.
They weren't last.
They weren't the worst.
They weren't the worst.
None of those teams made the playoffs. The Falcons didn't make the playoffs, right? Yeah.
Right. So, actually, the only team that I guess you would look at, the Detroit Lions had 37. They were the first team on this list moving from bottom to top. They were at 37. They made the playoffs. They were the first playoff team. And then right above them were the Rams at 38.
Well, they were without Hutchinson, and they put up points.
The Broncos were first with 63. So just so we're clear.
That's who we play first.
The Tennessee Titans had 32. So if you doubled 32, you would get 64, just one more than the Denver Broncos. This cover 2 is Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone. Number 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Door. 615-737-1045 is the number. We're going to go to the phones and bring on Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports. And Easton, what's a narrative surrounding the Titans offseason practices so far that everyone's bought into, but you're like, whoa, slow your roll. This seems a little sus.
Good question.
Suspect.
The thing that I've been thinking about the past 24 hours is just the wide receiver depth chart. And I feel like everybody has maybe a slightly different opinion on which guys are locks and which guys aren't to make this roster. And I'm just not so sure it's as clear a division when it comes to who's in and who's out as we want to make it out to be. I think the coaching staff sees this as a more open competition, even for some guys that were free agent additions that we see as stalwart NFL guys that are going to make the team for sure, like Tyler Lockett and Van Jefferson. And I'm not saying they're not going to make the team.
Hey, Easton, we're gonna try and call you on another line. We're getting the same thing we got with Jordan DeJaney last time, and stuff. So we're gonna try and call you on a different line. I don't know. Why is this only our show? That's what I want to know.
Somebody's duping us, Jackson, and you're not on top of your game. You
White chocolate over here is hurting us over here.
Where's your A game?
He's going to get Easton back on the phone. I know Easton was going to talk about the wide receiver depth chart, and I could hear him say some stuff about that it's not the top 4, the top 5 is not as set as what everybody thinks in his opinion. That's the narrative that he thinks. So as soon as we bring Easton back, we'll let him finish
top 4?
it. Yeah, I think he was saying top 4. I couldn't hear. I'm trying to.
Well, let's go. Ridley 1.
Yeah. To me, I don't know if I want to call it a top 4 list, but I have to feel like there's
Lockett,
5.
Jefferson.
To me, there's 5 wide receivers for sure making this roster, and it's Van Jefferson, Tyler Lockett, Calvin Ridley, Io Manor, and Chimere DK.
Right, those are the 2 picks. Yeah.
All right, Easton, we're going to try you on this line. Okay, so we're going to start it off the top. What's a narrative surrounding Titans offseason practices so far that everyone's bought into, but you're not?
Hello. Do I sound less robotic this time?
A little bit.
Uh-oh. It's still there a little bit.
But we're going to roll with it.
Can we trudge forward with this?
Yes.
Okay. I'll enunciate. The thing that I am questioning so far is maybe this idea that Tyler Lockett is a lock to make the roster. I'm not sure any of these receivers outside of Calvin Ridley and the 2 fourth-round pick rookies are a lock to make this roster. I think it's a relatively open competition. Right now is probably a part of that, to be honest, and he just had a kid, so I'm not upset with that or anything, and he's a stalwart veteran who I'm sure is going to look fine in training camp. But there's a reason why he was available when he was and why he's on the contract that he is, and I think that there are a number of guys that have potential to break out this summer, and I'm just excited to see who is and who isn't. So I'm not sure that the list of locks for this wide receiver room is a very is as clear as people make it out to be.
Well, here's the thing. I have to disagree with you on this because, it's a lock. I think the top 5 are a lock, barring injury, obviously, because there's nobody behind them that's going to push them off the roster. Nobody's going to push Tyler Lockett off the roster. We just got to be honest here. When the pads come on, Tyler Lockett is a pro's pro, and he's going to be valuable in the slot.
Is he still?
Yes. I don't think there's any reason. Go watch the film, I guess.
He's clearly a declining player. I did watch the film last year. He's a declining player.
Why do you feel like he's a declining player? What on tape made you say that he's a declining player? Because really, when you look at his stats, he's not a declining player. He's really more of a victim of opportunity.
And to be fair, I'm not saying that the situation he was in last year in Seattle was perfect by any means. So I'm not just talking about the fact that he had I don't even know, probably a career low in yards and all of those things. That's a part of it. But I don't know. I see a guy that is on the wrong side of 30 pretty significantly and it has lost a step and is leaning on the savvy the way that you see these guys when they get to this age and the guys that manage to still win at this age, kind of like we saw with Hopkins last year, where they know how to sit down in the soft spot of the zone. They know how to get open. Even though that they don't have the burner speed and the ability in that way. And I think the biggest thing going for him is the fact that he is a master of health. right? And so if he's going to be available, that's great. But we talk about him being a master of health. Yes, he had a kid, and that's part of the reason he's not here right now. He's also nursing a hammy, right? So, like, he's already not healthy.
Is he?
That's what I heard.
Oh, okay. Well, I haven't heard the hammy thing, so that is news to us.
Well,
but
that's why he's not practicing.
Yeah.
Now you're making me think there may be a chance that I have my wires twisted on that. So fact check me on that one. But that's what my going assumption was at the moment.
I guess I just look at it and I go, who's going to supplant him on the roster? Now, listen, does that mean that Chimere DK or Alec Manor or maybe someone else that I'm not, giving credence to couldn't supplant him by year's end? Because, I mean, obviously that is what happened in Seattle. But at the end of the day, we're talking about a guy that still had 12.2 yards per reception mainly out of the slot, a high success rate. He didn't have a career low in his yards, but I mean, he wasn't far from it. And a guy that's been relatively healthy over his whole career. And the savvy is what makes me feel like that is the reason why when the pads come on, we're going to see a difference between Tyler Lockett, Van Jefferson, Calvin Ridley, and everybody else. Because that's just kind of how, more often than not, the NFL goes unless you have a superstar player.
Right. I hear you. And to be clear, I don't think he's unlikely to make the team. I just don't see him as this lock to make the team that I think a lot of people do. The actual roster math of it, which is, I think, the question you're asking here, I think that in terms of placing guys in positions on the depth chart, I think Chimere DK is going to be your starting slot. They're going to want him as the big slot, and they like how he's coming along so far. And then I think the way that if he were to be supplanted on the roster, it would be, and this is where I know you and I differ on this, it would be Xavier Restrepo establishing himself as the second guy in the slot room. And that's what Ridley, or not really, that's what Lockett is at this point, right? He's a slot. So if there are a pair of guys that they want to use primarily as slots that they see as more valuable to keep on the roster than him, that's the way he doesn't make it.
We're on the phone with Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports, covers Tennessee Titans.
Well, let's go to the quarterback, and that's what we're talking about, Ward. How quickly is he adapting to, let's say, the NFL environment?
Yeah, we talked to his quarterback coach yesterday. We spoke with Brian Callahan, of course, and we spoke with Cam, too. And, I keep hearing from all of them that he is coming along really well in the classroom, picking up things pretty naturally. I think there's been a lot of carryover from the things that he was doing at Miami to the things that they're going to have him do in this system. There's a lot of overlap there, and I know a lot of smart folks kind of covered that pre-draft, that it's not too dissimilar, the systems. And so it sounds like he is making some pretty significant strides there. We've heard about how he's maximizing his time, right? So he's coming in at 5 a.m. with a group of the young guys who he and Xavier Restrepo, I believe, did this a lot at Miami, and so they've kind of peer pressured everybody into doing this with them to get some work in before work. And you're hearing that he's having to get kicked out of the building sometimes because he's staying too late at night, and so I'm not sure when the guy is sleeping. But he's getting his work in, and he is all in on the quarterback one of it all. The cliche first guy in, last guy out.
So were you the one that asked that question about burnout?
I did.
Oh yeah. So kind of explain why you think he's going to have burnout.
I don't think he's going to. I just, I would imagine when you've got a guy who is a young, important player on your team, the most important player on your team, and you're seeing him in every day at 5 a.m., and then you're not quite sure when he's leaving, you're not quite sure when he's sleeping, you as a coach, you probably do want to safeguard against them burning the candle on both ends in May.
Just like your boss, huh?
Exactly. Yeah, they grind me to the bone over here. And so... and that's what Callahan said, right? He said you want to safeguard against that, and you want to make sure that they know this is a marathon. And it's as long as a college season is, and it's even longer for guys in the NFL. And every year around December, we have that recurring storyline of like, well, here's where these guys would have been done if they were still in college. So let's see how they do here in the stretch in the NFL. And so I think physically, but also mentally, it can just be really taxing. This Blaine, the marathon of the NFL season is a marathon. And so you got to pace yourself.
No doubt about it. We're with Easton Freeze. Easton, I guess, what are our expectations? We were talking about Mr. Sweat here. What are your expectations for him now going into his second season being the 38th pick?
It's a great question. And I've been wondering about this too, right? Because he's a nose tackle mold, right? He's never going to have the pass rush upside that a Jeffrey Simmons has, for example, because that's okay, right? That's by design. You're not, that's not his job. It's not what they're asking him to do. So what is a fair expectation for what the next step is for him this season? And I tried to get to the bottom of that. I talking to his position coach, Tracy Rocker, yesterday, and they think that he's capable of anything he can set his mind to. And, I even brought up the idea that he's never going to have the pass rush ability that Simmons has. And Rocker, I think, halfway jokingly pushed back on the idea, never say never. I'm saying never on that. So what is the best case for somebody like him? I do think that he can solidify himself as, and I think I heard, Zach, were you talking earlier in the show about how you were a day one Sweat believer as a 3-down player in the NFL?
That is correct.
He's somebody, yeah, and I was as well, and there were a few of us, and we were a proud few. He kind of showed us that last year, that he has that 3-down ability. And they rotate him in and out like they do all of these guys. It's a rotational position, but he has the ability to play the majority of snaps. And I think he was either first or second of the rookie defensive tackles in terms of total snaps played last year, completely annihilating the narrative that he was too fat or too whatever to stay on or just not skilled enough to stay on the field on all types of downs. And so if he can just continue to demonstrate, not only can he be on the field for all of those downs, but he's able to really be an element in the pass rush on obvious passing downs, I think that's what a consistency element that he can bring this year.
No doubt about it. Easton Freeze, one more here for me. I know on offense, I think we think an undrafted guy is going to make the team of Restrepo. But on defense, give us a guy who's undrafted free agent that we need to keep our eyes on. Maybe it's a couple guys.
Jermari Harris, the cornerback out of Iowa, is the one who's caught my eye so far. And full disclosure, I have not watched the defense as intently as I've watched the offense so far. Just because it's easier, frankly, to watch the defense at practice when the pads are on, in my opinion, than it is the offense.
Yeah, I would agree.
But the guy that keeps drawing my attention, even though I'm not trying to give him my attention, is Jermari Harris, UDFA out of Iowa, very good player for a number of years as a starter at Iowa, one of the greatest defensive programs in the country. And he was somebody that, frankly, I was a little bit surprised went undrafted. He was somebody that on a number, Dan Brugler board, these guys that do the full draft, was expected to be a draftable player. And I think just some of the physical limitations and maybe also some medical things that we're not aware of are what kept him off the board in the 7th round. But he's somebody that we know that they paid a pretty significant chunk of money to. So he was a priority UDFA. And I think that he has I don't see what from his college pedigree is going to keep him from establishing a role as the 4th, 5th, 6th cornerback on this team. Beyond the 3 starters they have at that position, it is a wide open competition for those depth cornerbacks who we know almost every year you're going to end up dipping into your cornerback 4, 5, 6 depth, because that's just the nature of the position, especially when you have uncertainties with L'Jarius Sneed at the very top. And so it's very important for them to have some guys emerge. And I think that he is my early favorite to be one of those guys.
There you have it. Easton Freeze.
Okay, Easton, call it now. How does the backup quarterback situation shake out for the Tennessee Titans?
Well, I know you and I were talking yesterday about how if we had our druthers, they would trade Levis, cut the other 2, and then sign a mystery 4th guy up from off the street. Because frankly, that's how I feel right now watching them. No disrespect to these guys. It's just not inspiring. And Levis is so clearly and obviously the best of the backups, and the other 2, I just think you can do better. And I think the guys are going to get cut at the end of August from other teams. They're demonstrably better. And so if I had to guess, if I'm trying to be predictive, I do think Brandon Allen will end up being the primary backup, and that Tim Boyle will be cut, and that Will Levis will be traded somehow. And people that want a good backup will find it uninspiring. I actually kind of subscribe to the idea that bad teams should have bad backups. And if you're going to if all of your hopes rest in a young star like Cam Ward, and he, God forbid, goes down, you should just be the 2020 Bengals, lose Joe Burrow, lose out, and go get Jamar Chase in the draft because that's all that matters. That's my opinion on it. But if you want a good backup, you probably need to go looking somewhere else.
All right, Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports. We appreciate it, Easton. This has been a little bit of a technical difficulties, but I think we rebounded nicely. What do you think?
We're trending the
Oh, man, look at that. He just started cutting back. What timing that was. That was Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports.
Horrible.
All right, when we come back, we'll finish up talking about the defense. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone.
Guys, if something's holding you back from performing at your best, it's time to do something about it with Performance Enhancement Treatment Packages from Edge Peptide. Whether in the gym or on the course, with Edge Peptide and hormone therapy, you can show up stronger, feel better, recover faster, and stay in the game longer. Also can boost your energy, build lean muscle mass, and heal from those nagging injuries. And as an athlete myself, I know how those injuries can affect your game. So if you're struggling with joint pain, suffering from a recent injury, or looking to recover faster after surgery, Edge has you covered. From peptide packages to PRP, stem cells, and high-film muscle stimulation, Edge is your exclusive Nashville area peptide specialist. And don't wait till summer to feel your best, and don't trust your health to some online pharmacy, Jackson. And remember, at Edge, your consultation fee of $250 is waived with your initial order. So give them a call today at 615-724-1878. That's 724-1878.
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by all Four Seasons Garage Doors. 615-737-1045 is the number. We continue our conversation about the Tennessee Titans defense. And I do have to tell the people a stat. So we told everybody before we had Easton on that the Tennessee Titans had 32 sacks, which was tied for 30th best in the NFL.
That's not true?
That is true.
Oh.
It just gets worse.
I thought you were going to give us something better.
No. There is no power or positivity on this show today. 16.7% pressure rate, which is 31st in the NFL, only ahead of the Carolina Panthers. So we remember when we were talking about the Detroit Lions, right, and their low sack total.
Right.
They were in the bottom half of the NFL. They only had 37 sacks. They were fourth in pressure rate with 26.2.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
So, yeah, yikes. And that's really where the Tennessee Titans have to get better. I mean, you can have you don't want it, but you can have a low sack total, but your pressure rate's got to be there because you got to be affecting the play, and the Tennessee Titans defense was not affecting the play enough last year, which is obvious by a 3-14 record. Now, there are some games where the defense is not the problem, but, overall, you got to figure out you got to solve this. And that's what they hope that Femi Oladejo can help as well, his progression over the year. But that's a lot of pressure on a second rounder. So you got to get creative with your pressures. You got to get home with 5, maybe 4 rushers. And it's going to be really hard for this unit based on what we know about this unit, but maybe stuff will change because they're changing their philosophy on the guys that they are getting, these bigger guys.
Yeah, I think one thing that happened last season, after that Commanders game and teams were able to run on them, that really, they kind of started going downhill at that point in time, looking back on the season, because then once you can run, now you can throw it anytime. And then now that kind of opened the floodgates on the defense, and they didn't finish as strong those last 4 games or so as they were playing, earlier in the middle of the season. So, and they might have ran out of gas. It could have been that too. You can only have so much. I think they had some injuries in the Commanders game with the linebacker. So if I can recall, and so that could have been part of the problem. But then once they are able to run, now you're looking, man, you're in trouble. They can run or pass on first down, and now you're screwed. So that the defense is going to have to play better, but the offense is going to have to keep the ball longer too. And remember, I said it was going to happen as time goes on. The defense is out there a lot. About halfway through the season, you're going to start saying, hey, the dudes are going to get tired. Like, hey, man, we can't be playing 100 plays every game. I mean, this is no way. You got to help us out. That's what it's called, team. So eventually, not knowing as a player that's happening, but you're like, well, dang, man, I mean, I'm exhausted. You just don't have enough left in the tank. I mean,
maybe that's why they've also gone bigger twos because they know that there's wear and tear and all this kind of stuff, and maybe this is going to be able to help mitigate some of that. Yeah, 10th lowest blitz rate in the NFL last year, which is, again, if you're going to have a low pressure rate, maybe you mitigate that by blitzing more. But they had the 10th lowest blitz rate in the NFL. But the Tennessee Titans. What do you think about the defensive backs? Do you think that with what they got with Jarvis Brownlee Jr., in totality, how do you view the defensive backs? You got Amani Hooker, but now you have Xavier Woods next to him instead of Quandre Diggs. You have L'Jarius Sneed, but instead of Chidobe Awuzie, which is who we all expected at this time last year to be the starter, you have Jarvis Brownlee Jr. You still have Roger McCreary. You still got a bunch of young players, too. Where do you fall on the line of this defensive backfield?
I think it's a good, solid group. I mean, Woods, Hooker. If you just kind of look at the starters, we're talking about Sneed, Brownlee, and what's the kid's name from Auburn? I want to say McCourty, but that's not his name.
This year you have Sneed,
McCreary. Yeah, McCreary.
Yeah.
So
I don't know why I was having a hard time with that. You infected my brain.
Yeah, I know. But so I think the starting group looks good. I mean, you got Brown as the backup, a young up-and-coming young safety. See how he continues to develop. So I actually like the group. Now, is it something that flies off the Richter scales as far as it's great? No, but when I say it's formidable, and it's because how they play, and it's all about Snead, really, at this point in time. He's got to stay healthy for this group to be able to do what they need to do. Because if you're lacking in pass rush, if Snead's healthy, he can literally say, I got you, and then everybody else kind of play within the scheme of the defense. And then I think then they can do some other things as far as pressures.
Is Snead kind of like the biggest Jenga piece for this whole defense?
So. I really believe that. I do because, Wilson Denard wants to really get after the quarterback, and he wants the ball thrown quick. He wants the blitz scheme, even if they don't get there and they don't touch the quarterback. And so now you got to have man-to-man corners, and if you can't do that if you don't have even a good pass rush. So if you have one guy who's man-to-man, and then everybody else kind of playing zone. If we don't get pressure, we're not eliminating, bringing the house. I think it helps out a lot. So then you can then navigate, disguise, deceive, all of those things, I think, which is, all part of the game. And I think Snead's health really will determine how good the defense will be, not just the secondary.
Right. It seems like he's the most important part right now, whether that's what they intended or not.
Not right, yeah.
That's what it is, because we know what Jeffrey said. We know
You're
we
handicapped.
can.
As a coordinator,
it did. I mean, there was only so much you could do with the pieces that you had last year, especially after you traded away.
Did a real good job with the different guys. Especially Baker.
Oh yeah, Baker, and you still got Baker on the team.
Yeah.
You still got an ascending Gabe Judy Lawley. Right. You got Marcus Harris that you drafted, Jamari Harris, who is making some waves. Kevin Winston Jr. coming down the pipeline as well. You got a bunch of young players too, really but you need dependable players, and I think that's where it kind of falls on Snead, is that we have seen everybody that they have signed and everybody that they have drafted outside of Kevin Winston Jr. have been determined as dependable players, available players. And right now we don't know what Snead is. I mean, not only I don't even know what's going to happen with this off-field situation. I don't think anything's going to happen with it, but you never know. But you got to see him come back to practice. You got to see him be what he was, because how many times have we seen players take a while to get to where they were? And does the Tennessee Titans defense have that amount of time to wait on L'Jarius Snead? I mean, they're going to have to regardless, but to wait on L'Jarius Snead to get back to form coming off an injury like he had.
Yeah, man.
That's tough.
I'm sure hoping that he's out there. So then we won't know probably till training camp, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope we see him at least a little bit even next week.
Yeah.
I want to.
We know he's in the building, so that's at least a good sign. But I would love to see him.
That means he's ahead of schedule. He's gonna probably be practicing the majority of the time in training camp, and that would make me feel a lot better. And guess what? The players feel the same way. They when you have a piece, they say, "Man, if we got him, man, we gonna be pretty good."
Yeah, and I think that's how the team has kind of talked too. Like, I mean, even Mike Bergonzi and Chad Brinker, when they talk about Snead, we still. On point, White Chocolate. You nailed it. Even with talking about all the stuff around Snead, they all expect him to be available. They all expect him to be there. And they all kind of are saying the same thing. We know the competitor that he is, and we know the player that he is, and we expect him to be that. And that would be huge for this defense. That changes, like we have talked about, the entire outlook of this defense. And maybe you can get away with a Cedric Gray or James Williams as your starting inside linebacker. Maybe opposite of Cody Barton.
Things,
yeah, right.
And then with the defensive just scheme and system, and then just think if he's locking that guy down, the quarterback's looking for that guy.
Yeah,
and all of a sudden he gets hit in the mouth,
right,
and he fumbles because he held on to the ball one more second. And see, that's the type of impact I think he brings to the table. I mean, I don't know if we're going to ever see it.
With Tennessee Titans, luck is not on our side, right? I mean, I think that's the thing that creeps in. It's battered Titan syndrome, right? Like we know that once we see one injury to a veteran player that had a lot of promise and was an elite level, we know that he's never going to recover if you're a Tennessee Titans fan.
I refuse to bend to that, but I am starting to
believe it.
Yeah, I know. This is the last. I can't hold on to it anymore.
All right, 3HL's up next. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone. And in the meantime,
and in between time,
peace.